Ara ens farà una conferència petita conferència el Cino Zucchi, ja l'han presentat abans, faig una brevíssima presentació. És un professor del Politècnic de Milà, professor de disseny urbà i de projectes. També ha estat professor a Harvard, té publicacions diverses, un estudi important a Milà, projectes importants al propi Milà i diferents llocs d'Europa, de totes les escales, una cosa que ens interessa. Pendents del que ens explica, convido a passar.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. And I thought to bring a mixture between some general reasoning about the themes of this, how do we look at the city, also the mental models we have of it in a very quick way, and if I have some time also to see some case studies. But I start from a very, very simple, obvious, banal issue. One could say that when we look at historical city, we feel it as a second nature. Everybody likes it, and somehow the two main needs of people are to be protected from the weather or from security and to get together. And in a way, the shapes of the historical city, the room and the street, maybe conjugated by the portico, some kind of interface between them, are very felt as they've always been there. This image is very strong, and it can be very banal also. So it's both a commonplace and can be taken from a touristic dépliant. But in a way, something around 1850, in the mid-18th century, we felt the old city was too small, and we started to do some violence on it. We start putting railroads, we start to enlarge it, and we thought that the new city could be planned in a sort of Tayloristic way, analyzing the elements of it, and we thought also this rational model would generate in itself some kind of order, if not beauty. This is a very, I would say, Marxist view of the city, the factory, the capital, and all the other workers. But for some reason, things did not really go that way. Like in Jurassic Park, we planned things to go in one way, but it sort of went out of control. And we see that today's the spectacle of the metropolis, especially the eastern ones. We are making this environment, but it's almost like we're not making it. When we look at it, it looks almost something made by nature, like a volcano. It can be judged more with the idea of the city beautiful. It could be more like the sublime, I would say. It's almost fearful. And in 1964 or 65, my father came back from New York and brought me a book, The World of the Future. And this was the cover of this book. I was dreaming when I was a kid to live like a Jetsons in this city. But I think this also represents very well the way modernistic planning tried to deal with the city. In a way, we thought the experience of before was not useful anymore. We start analyzing it by splitting in function, the function of moving, the function of working, the function of dwelling, the function of getting together, and then we reassemble all these things. All this modernistic planning somehow is obsessed also by some kind of organic metaphor. The streets are arteries, the green spaces are lungs, the units are cells. Think how many organic metaphors are inscribed in this model. But then I was thinking of living in that city, and I rather live in this one. Many people try to describe it. They call it extended city, città diffusa, città estesa. Even a child can use it. Even a child can know a highway sign. We get in, we get out. We deserve it. We built it every day. We go play tennis in a bubble. We shut ourselves in a residential enclave. We go to the entertainment center. It works well. The only thing, it seems, it has lost somewhere that the specialization of function left forgot the fecund overlapping between things that we feel still in the historical city. The black hole here is the no man's land, the land of the gypsies, is what's left by the detachment of things. In a way, in Venice, you don't need a playground because the whole city is a playground. So I can think, can we still talk about urban design? In a way, the words of Walter Benjamin are really prophetic. You know, the new city opens as a landscape and shutters as a room. Are we having a city of very large collective spaces just connected by, you know, a flowing world and some private cells, in a way? Can we still articulate the in-between? This seems to be the problem of today. And in this city model, of course, the Americans were very good in doing it. If the heart is the shopping center, the aorta is the expressway, and the cells, of course, are the single-family housing. So to be happy today, maybe you just need, you know, a swimming pool, a basketball, and just be connected to the highway, and you need an Eros Ramazzotti iPod in your earphone. So do we still need the in-between? But then, if this is the case, the more and more shopping centers are reproducing some kind of the intensity inside, the more the rest becomes just almost a wasteland or something a neutron bomb could explode. And this works. In a way, we are producing things which work. But then, this program-based activity, basing design on the program, how many cars, you know, we do it every day. I mean, to do a road, we calculate the number of cars. Somehow is not so satisfactory from the point of view of changing. These are quite eerie pictures of abandoned shopping malls. The shopping malls have a lifespan regarding their investment, and then when they're gone, they seem not very good to be recycled in many ways. So we wonder, what happened? How come, you know, the peristyle of Diocletian Palace can be recycled well, and the city we're building is not behaving the same way? So we tend to have a kind of idyllic view of the historical city. Even the historical city was quite violent. This is the Piazza del Duomo in Milano. This is the 1800 shape, but the yellow one are the thing demolished, and this is the Galleria where they were building it. So it's not true that what we have in the past, you know, the Ramblas were cut through, the historical city is so harmonic. All the city is a palimpsest, is an overlay of layers. Some of them were quite traumatic or But then today, we are sort of, at least in Europe, somehow rediscovering the issue of density. Now, many times we make all these diagrams with all big numbers that give some kind of objectivity what we're talking. But there's a collective reflection about this issue. Of course, this issue is not so new. I mean, you know, even from Derrida, from Le Corbusier, or many of, you know, the proposal of last century were confronting themselves with this question. And some people try to make formulas. This is taken from Leslie Martin's Space Structures, where he tried to put all the variables, for example, between the consumption of the distance from the center and the density and some kind of light factor. But then even Leslie Martin, Jacob was saying a little bit the same thing before, you know, you can have a number, but these are exercises by the student of Leslie Martin demonstrated that in a 200 by 200 meter plot, you can make all these, say, abstract urban fabrics with the same density. So he said, still we have to think, what kind of city are we giving? So those towers have the same density of those blocks. But today we are realizing something else. The density is much more, say, ecological. These are quite serious studies about the consumption. For example, a very sparse cities consume, this is just transportation, 70 gallons, while Europe consumes 15 on an average. And this demonstrates that the greenest suburban household is still much more energy consumption than the worst urban apartment. This is the consumption for heat and the consumption for moving. So this is, let's say, a green suburban, and this is green urban, but even the very bad urban apartment is better because of many reasons, because there's also a surface to ratio and so on. So we are feeling that sprawl can be very pleasant, but in a way is very unecological. And of course, we have a problem of the limitation of the city. This is the Milano region going north. You almost have a continuous city all the way to the lakes. So some people are trying to put together, let's say, nature and density. These images, they're very seductive somehow, but I think they still have something which does not work. This is from 1964. Christopher Alexander wrote an essay called A City is Not a Tree. He was saying, if we take the tree as a network model where single units are joined in houses, are joined in satellite towns and so on, this is quite typical like the Victor Gouin before, this is too hierarchical. He said the real city works rather as he called the semi-lattice. Lattice in English means some kind of grid, that where each point is connected to the other one by more than one relationship. So the tree model is too hierarchical. So I think that in a way we have, I'm not saying we should be nostalgic, but Place des Vosges is the example where the European city has a traditional put it together city of nature in a very convincing way, and in a way in a very flexible way. So this is a quite utopian sketch of Le Corbusier. Can we think of Europe as a big city, Central Park? It's very easy to take EasyJet back and forth, and in a way we're close enough to spend a weekend somewhere else, but we're different enough to be another neighborhood. So I think this is a very comfortable and quite interesting vision. And today we also have different instruments. Of course, information technology got very strong. So the same things, in a way, the same problems our forefathers had, today we can analyze them in a more sophisticated way. In the beautiful exposition you have downstairs, you have really some of these working models. For example, this I just found on the internet 2 days ago. These are the number of selfies in London. You have many cities. The red one are the one done by the tourists, and the blue one by the dwellers. So this tells you the location, where do the tourists go in a city and that. And you have very sophisticated instruments like that. Then in a way, the typical functionalist, I would say, model, sometimes applied also to the scale of the city, was, I would say, an input, blackbox, output model. I get the analysis, I get the data, how many children, the course of the sun, the stress of steel, and then some kind of architect in white apron would solve the problem, and you get an output. I could say that these systems, they can give a more interesting feedback. We can get something from the results that re-regulates our input. And feedback is not always rebalancing. This is a typical feedback process of the tail of a plane. When the plane angles more, you get more pressure on the back tail, so it tends to get back. So this is a self-balancing feedback. But this is a self-amplifying, unbalanced feedback when you get loud in the loudspeakers, because your voice gets in the loudspeaker again until it whistles. So not all processes of feedback are self-regulating. But I think we have to put something else, which is the issue of time. What comes out does not re-regulate immediately what comes in. I call this the campsite shower theory. And I try to explain myself. When you go in a camping and you try to take a shower, it gets really, really cold. So somehow you turn on the faucet, but it's still cold. So you overturn it, and then it gets really hot. So you turn it back again until you get it right. In mathematical terms, you can analyze this. This is a diagram how this kind of, it's called time-delayed feedback systems regulate. You tend to bounce off to the solution, and you have to be mathematically patient. You have to wait not to oversteer, one could say. Okay? So is architecture a feedback system with a time delay? When the architecture is built, it's already late on respect of the needs. It was called. We had Spain and Italy had a lot of financial crisis. We are building real estate, very big projects. You have Zadi, Libeschi, Milano. No, it's totally unsold, totally deserted, because they were planned for a totally different market or point of view. But this is true in general. You can have a new need. Many of my friends ask me a desk for the computer at the house, some kind of studiolo di San Gerolamo, I don't know, San Jerome studio, and now with the wireless, it's useless. So, you know, a house, every kind of building probably in his life will go at least through 2 or 3 totally changing of the heating system or the technological system. It will survive, and maybe more. So, now, what are the issues? This fact that architecture is slow, is not totally just in time. What can we tell us? How should we behave? To me, it's a deep thing. Of course, one could say we should be quicker and we should do more temporary architecture. Then we can say we should preview more. We should be more sophisticated in determining not what is now, but what will be next. Then one could say we cannot plan that, and we can make some flexibility. Then one could say we should retrofit, or we can use what is there to try to adapt it. I think the good old ways are somehow quite good, and I think we should put some kind of hiatus between the structure of the city and the housing. Many rationalist principles that tie too much the type to the city. In a way, the plan of the city survived because it had some kind of flexibility in respect to the substance. You know, we have in Italy many cities which have the Roman grid but have no Roman monuments. And of course, I would say durability is an issue. This is, the Sikh are very good in taking the cattle. So there's a big Sikh community in Italy, in Pianura Padana, and this is the annual party, and they meet in a typical Italian square. It's the biggest celebration. So maybe this square, which was planned, I mean, this can happen because of this degree of freedom, I could say. And the other thing, don't we all dream of a nice terrace, but can we, this is taken somewhere in Ghent, I think, these very romantic images are used to be close to the city, the idea that the house could be almost attached to the cathedral. So, I don't know if I have time still, do I? I maybe go very quickly through some empirical, an architect just, you know, can draw some kind of faucet or whatever. I mean, I think that what we can do, in the book by Gio Ponti, he quoted Mother Cabrini say, Ringrazio Dio che il mondo non va a modo mio. I thank the God that words does not go in my own way. So, thank the God architects are not as powerful as we think. You know, so somehow we have some kind of self-regulation. So, to do our best, a newspaper, like some months ago, asked me, Cino Zucchi, there's always talking about social housing, co-housing, this and that. Can you just sketch us something? So I said, okay, I just sketch some kind of model. I was not very interested in it. Very traditional houses, and also some sort of, you know, people like monofamilies and very big communes, and there you can be in open. Some kind of sketch about that. You know, they like it very much. This is just dedicated to them. But what I try to say is that let's give a degree of freedom between the cell and the city. So these are just collages. This was done just in 3 hours. And to say that maybe we should allow for not mechanizing too much. Because if you plan units for people who are under 35 or over 65, what does it mean? That when you get 36, you have to change the unit? I'm a little bit against all this idiosyncratic design. Even Jacob before was saying that people split up in the meantime, you know, while building the house. So I think that the city should resist the life of its inhabitants. This is the most dense, the quicker and the most cheap project I've ever done. They just rushed to do some housing for the expo, and they made a plan by Citerio. This density was not given by us, and they called me to do these 2 towers and a little bit of the power space. Everything was done like in 1 month. So we get the charge to do these 2 incredibly dense towers. We adjust a little bit the scheme, but also the open space. It's just a citadel. So it had to be a circle, but during the day you could go through. I took these pictures, I didn't take it, just somebody sent me yesterday. So the building it, we have almost no supervision on the thing, just the entrance. But just in this incredible density, we try to give some kind of Rockefeller Center feeling, see how compact these things are. And they're quite interesting. Cells, very tight, but with a lot of open space. And of course, the issue is how to mediate between the scale of the cell and the scale of a tower. This is 80 feet high. And also how to give some kind of quality to the base. So basically, it's almost totally prefabricated houses, very, very cheap, totally standardized, but with some devices, a precast concrete, to try to, in a way, give some quite generous open spaces, but also give a figure which is not just piling up the cells. This is a much richer thing. I start from single project, I'll go quite quick, just a competition I won next to the big intervention of Cisapelli, and this is historical city. So basically, I could see this is a side dish, something like a salad, to the big thing, and it's the most traditional building I made. It's quite, let's say, expensive. So this little bit vintage look that it has. This is the new Cisapelli, but they're fragments of the historical city from the turn of the century. So this was some kind of bowing down to the existing city and mediating the new city with the old one. I don't explain the project, I just go very quick. Just to this question of urban lexicon, but then also has a very nice garden. So has a very urban side, but a very, let's say, the terraces are very beautiful, and it looks down, the plants are here, not yet. So it tried to conjugate a lot of environmental quality of the garden with the urban side on the other side. In a very, again, dense city. So the atrium are nice, you can overlook the cities. Then, I go quickly, was the main food market of Bologna was teared down, and there was a master plan not done by us, and we made a competition about 1 to 3 blocks. And in a very troublesome way, as you always, in Italy, the real estate people really went through a big crisis. They're totally out of money now. But just to say that we try to interpret this sort of low-high block, and also what's interesting is we mixed free market housing with social housing. So I think a mixture of things is very important. And this is not totally constructive. Just to say that the attempt is to deal with these quite low-budget schemes, giving some kind of quality to the open space, but not totally enclosing them. While I was taking this picture, my wife was sitting here a little bit bored, reading newspaper, said, Cino, but somehow this place feels well, because it's a little bit like a country place where the kid would play with the mother looking down, but it's not totally enclosed. This semi-open court, it embraces a little bit. So there's always an attempt to deal with the in-between spaces. These are just constructed. This is the very cheap social housing, all done with plaster. It's not very well done yet. Okay, then we were talking about density in very hubs. This is a plan we did in Helsinki, in a suburban station, and now there's just a big value of infrastructure. This is some kind of directional center, a housing project, and something. So this city was really divided in two. It's called the Pasila station, with just a bridge, and this is a 15-meter jump. So this is the panorama today. It's not, you just have this infrastructure connection, and this is the station, which is a little bit boring. So in 1995, we did a scheme where they wanted not to close down the station. There was a doubling of the railway. I go quick. And this is the street level. So this is the existing bridge. We did the existing station. There was a continuation of the atrium of the station in a covered kind of walkway. There was a big canopy here. This was like a business center, a square, and this was all quite high dense housing. This was a sports center and a TV place. So the idea, the Finnish people are really, really ecological. The idea was almost having no cars and put an incredible density on this hub, has a station and also a subway line underneath. So extreme density on the extreme accessibility. They liked really much this scheme. They made the master plan out of it. There was a big debate about going high. Helsinki is quite a low city, so they had these towers. But the city administration, I mean, the mayor wanted to go high, but the technician from the administration, they said, no, wait a minute. So the Catholic are good mediators, between the extremes. But now they call us back, and in the meantime, the housing, the office market went in crisis, so they asked to redo a more detailed plan about the towers. But the interesting thing, they wanted smaller and higher, but with an interesting thing that to put housing on top and offices on bottom. That's, I think, this is a so Jacques cartoon, he says, I hope they will not ruin by nice new plan with the minarets. So it's very, actually this was 2009. So you have a lot of greenhouses here, some common spaces, restaurants. So this is really a building which has some complexity. Offices on bottom and top. Actually, we did not go all the way to design. This is the exit from the subway. It's one level down from the bridge because this steps down to the way. And this is a typical plan for offices and has two elevator, and then housing on top with some green spaces, and everybody has a sauna. So these are, let's say, model skyscrapers because they wanted to go high, but they thought that in Helsinki they had some quite ugly skyscrapers. So say, can you make them high but beautiful? Make a pilot plan. So this, we showed that you can have some variety. We made not one tower, but 2 towers as a model. Then when I disassembled the model to send it, I realized my real design was not the towers, but was this, the open space. This one. The space in between. And I thought, we come from Italy, we're good in making towers in San Gimignano, but that's the real speciality is this, So can we have both towers and cozy space? And then this is a proposal we were asked for Tirana. Tirana, I don't want to go to the politics of Tirana, had an incredible development in the last 10 years, and half of the city is total illegal housing. So this is Tirana today. This is the axis during colonial times, the Italian trace. So the center of Tirana is somewhere here. Hotska made this mausoleum. I think it's this one. So it's very, very complex. But this was the area of the station. They're going to move the station here. So they make a big competition, international competition, to solve all these areas, the real downtown, and all the area along the river. So this is the Italian axis, is the center of the city. That was the area, but also the river. So we try to mediate. It was very complicated because all this part were total illegally, where almost you had no streets. So the idea was to build a new center here, to have some new roads crossing, to make an ecological relationship with the city and the reservoir. So it was like a plan for 300,000 people. It's very, not visionary. They were planning to increase this population in like 6 or 7 years. So it had both some kind of local scale and a very big scale, also integrated. We did it with Burhapo London, and Gustafsson Porter did the landscape. But here, it's in a funny way, we try to take almost the classical axis and turn it somehow also almost melted into nature. One theme was this metamorph from the existing situation to build up the edges, but also to include in time. So we're talking about metabolism. Of course, this is about the life of the city and not the evolution of the city. But in this case, can you allow for sliding door future to have, how can you intervene in something like that? It's very difficult. This is the axis looking out. And this is the new forum, the city hall, and the opera. Okay, I skipped this. This is something in Holland, just to say, it's about density. It's in Groningen in a container terminal area, and basically was infrastructural area, and they wanted really, really dense houses, but with the most of the houses entering directing from the street. So it's an urban scheme the city of Groningen asked us. Munich, I'll just go quickly. Again, themes of density, green, and what is the public space. We were talking before, you can't put shops all over the place. I mean, it's true. We have the model of the historical city, but then in new intervention, commerce on the ground floors does not work. It's true that in Holland you have this sort of, work, this almost lofty ground floor, you hide the parking. So some solution in that solution are very interesting. And also the question of the privacy of the ground floor is very different, because in Italy, if you fence off all over, so we still have differences in imagining housing. Housing habits are not so homogeneous in Europe yet, even if we travel a lot. Just to say that we try to put all the possible function to reinforce the public space and to get a reasonable, maybe not so radical, best of two worlds, to use the office building to screen from the noise. So the housing is here, but this is mixed or just facing inside because you were on the roads, and so on. And I finish up, if I still have time, with two quick things. This was the former Alfa Romeo factory, and the site I'm talking about, this facade we kept. Milano had a lot of dismissed industrial areas. And dismissed industrial areas are today in Europe having a big chunk of land with one property. Other places, not the only places, where you can really do urban design, because this again, finer grain substitution, again, Jacob was talking about, it's another way of transforming cities. You have gentrification quarters with totally changing character, but do not change in morphology. In this case, Gino Valle, I go quickly, did the overall scheme. This factory was quite big, was all this area here. This is Milano Old Fair Nucleus. And for some very strange reasons, I had the chance to do this, and basically the diagonal axis is by Gino Valle, but all the rest is by me. So it's a participatory, let's say, urban design with an office building, keeping the facade. We try to keep just at least one testimonial, and again, mixing free market housing toward the park, and this is subsidized housing. Again, very dense. Try to mediate with the tendency to isolated buildings of modern typologies and some kind of design on the ground floor. And to accept some kind of city lexicon, a little bit boring periphery, but with generous private open spaces. This is, say, the diagonal axis, and this is not totally finished. You're going to have a bridge now. They just put a bridge. They're quite old photographs. But just to say that this is the facade we kept. It's not particularly nice, but just to say that we kept some kind of almost block, and we made it porous toward the park. We tried to smile to the city, even the function of the ground floor were not so public. I think there's a need for housing to reinforce the public space. We try to give even in social housing lodges. Play around a little bit. We know that there's something, I think Peter Smithson said, the idea of being someone living somewhere. This problem of, identification. Say, I live on 3rd floor. It's important somehow to me. So this is the free market housing. Actually, we're very proud that the social housing is prettier than the free market housing. We like it more. So this is made out of stone. This is the social, and this is free market houses. Just to say that in Milano you have a good tradition also of modernist building, but what to me is very important is the ground floor. I mean, the open space. Even with no function, I'm quite happy going there. We call this what we're designing the kissing bench. And then I picture these people say, can I picture you? They were going a little bit more than kissing. I said, okay, stop, just kiss, not more than that. But we were quite happy that teenagers would kiss on the bench. And I finish up with this project. I mean, it's so strange. Once I said, for an architect to work in Venice is like for somebody to going out with Nicole Kidman. You always feel embarrassed, and you think photographers are somehow hiding in the restaurant, So, very strange competition. I was quite young. This was the area. And everybody, this was the reality, this factory, and everybody thinks of Venice this. So my real estate developers, they wanted that, but this was what was there. It was almost Bauhaus looking. And I go very quickly. This was very out of scale. I mean, all this was a total closed precinct. You even had private, these were private industrial bridges, and this was a school with a very big garden going all the way there. So we try our best. So the existing situation, we opened up a canal. We kept many buildings. Many buildings are kept, an industrial building, and we substituted some other ones. These are the one in the end I did. So I had the city. This is just Google. Just you see, this is the canal cut in. And the big point was to open up all the way to the Laguna, because this was a totally dead end. You could not get there. So this is Google. This was an existing building we transformed this way. So many times we try to give dignity to existing building. This is this building you saw before with a cut in between. Or some buildings you could not get up for hygiene reasons. We try to make almost infill. So this is the building who substituted that. And if you squint your eye, you almost can't see it. This is the canal we built. This was the existing one. And we did this square building, open it up. Let's say this was the existing situation. And so in a way, in Venice, you just need 2.5 meters to do urbanistics. You do almost microsurgery. Just a very plain social housing, again, building. We kept the chimney. So this is the new path cut through, and it goes all the way to the square. Just 3 kinds of windows. These are kitchen and bathrooms with the aeration, bedrooms and living rooms. And it's the closest thing we could do in respect to today's regulation to the historical thing. And this is funny because political situation of this project was really, really tough. I mean, it would be too long to tell. But so I just survived to the project. To me, it was a God thing. And I did not expect that building got so somehow iconic. This is an advertisement I found on the internet. Said, do you speak architecture in Italy? It's about an English course. Yes, I do. These are just some painters. This is a Belgian painter doing it. So it's, I realized it was very iconic. I didn't know whether it's a good, bad thing. Actually, if you squint your eyes, not so different what is there. But then I remember this phrase by Adolf Bene. This to me is very deep. He says, the functionalist looks for the more specific adjustment to the program. Somehow the rationalist looks for to embed into the building some kind of larger, resources. You have 2 kidneys, so you can sell one, or if one does not work very well. We have a spare tire in our body, so you need some kind of generosity. But then it says something interesting, very strange from Adolf Bene. This was writing in 1927, and it's called Der moderne Zweckbau. He says, form, nothing more understandable for a rationalist to put an emphasis on form. Form is born with the establishment of human relationships. The lonely man, isolated in the midst of nature, has no form or problem. The question of form arises together with a union of more individuals, and form is the condition we make possible men live together. We're talking about program, but sooner or later, this has to crystallize in a form where people agree. So, Carlos was saying we're mediators. We're not just political mediators. There's a point we make some kind of clay thing and say, do you like this? Do you like this park? Do you like the building to be this way? And this crystallization then has to survive, and in its form. People should agree on form. So I reevaluate the fact that to survive, you need a little bit of form. You don't just have to have program. Also, the market by Jacob was somehow say you need form to create a place. I mean, of course, it has to be the right one. So I just want to finish, say, the city is a very romantic place. We still like it very much, and we take the plane to go see cities. We like cities, so we're sentimental about it. So then they're not just a place we live, but we love to visit cities. Thank you for your patience.